Hi guys, Soizuki here, the jaded old gamer, or angry old vegan. We'll think of a tagline eventually, I'm sure of it. But anyway, for today's discussion, let's talk about the future of civilization. Where are we going? What's in store for us humans on planet Earth? And can we avoid total nuclear annihilation? I don't think so, but let's just ponder, explore, and contemplate these themes and ideas and see where we go. Now, I guess I'll add some footage of everyone's favourite disappointment of 2020, the second coming of CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk 2077. A major letdown, continual, constant delays, only to be released in a crappy, terrible, buggy, glitchy state, with a game that really was completely underwhelming and didn't deliver on any of its promises, and what probably amounts to basically a sci-fi reskin of Dead Island. It's that fucking dull. I mean, they just overcomplicated things with all the systems that they tried to integrate, and of course excluding the RPG elements if they ever existed prior to release, and giving us a fairly nice looking game, but with unfinished maps and all kinds of problems, not to mention the lackluster AI and extremely basic physics that's actually been rivaled and probably actually surpassed by mobile phone games, and I'm not even lying. Alright, so moving on. The future of society. Well, it's not looking good right now, and I really have to think back to a time when I was a bit younger and a bit more optimistic about life and the future and reality. I mean, of course, growing up was a shitty experience if you were me. My situation wasn't too dandy, to say the least, so I was always looking for a better future as such, and I was always quite interested in science fiction movies. Of course, Star Wars was a big one, and then you had Buck Rogers' Battlestar Galactica on TV, and they all portrayed like a really nice, sort of a pristine future where technology and society had reached its peak in its development of all of its systems, and of course they were fighting alien enemies or cyborgs or whatever it was, but it seemed that humans had sorted themselves out and had developed a society and cities and environments which were quite appealing, and no human was left out unemployed. Everyone had a purpose and place, and things were quite clinical, sterile, and everyone had one-piece jumpsuits. But of course, that was the future that I came to expect as a child. I thought with technology, it's only inevitable. It's only inevitable that we will, in fact, reach a point of civilization with all our discoveries, technology, and science that will ultimately result in a better society for humans as a whole. And then I remember, I think I was about 9 or 10, and I rented Blade Runner from the video store. Of course, I was too young to see it in the cinema. And the opening scene, as you all may know, is very dark, grim, bleak, and quite grim, really. Future Los Angeles is shrouded in a continual overcast and dark brown clouds and constant rain, it seems. And obviously you could tell it was due to human activity, pollution, and population growth and mismanagement and neglect for the environment and the natural world. I mean, it was never really said in the movie as such, but I felt like the city and the environment of Blade Runner was a uncredited character itself. It just had so much life to it, really. And I remember watching that at 9 years old or 10, whatever I was, and I thought, that's the future we're gonna get. I mean, even as a child, it just made more sense because I'd never been exposed to anything like that, really. And then Blade Runner came along, and I thought, this is where we're actually heading as a society. And now we can see today, in the year 2021, last year was pretty shit, and this year only seems to be getting worse. And it's quite similar and not unlike a B-grade sci-fi movie of the 80s, and of course those other great works of Aldous Huxley and George Orwell. And whereas we've basically pinned ourselves into a corner and allowed ourselves to be controlled by a totalitarian state and dictatorship. And it seems that way when you look around, and if you don't really subscribe to the mainstream narrative, you'll understand that what's really going on, and there are reasons and agendas behind things, and the television is really a mass mind control and manipulation tool. The things that it spews out, and the garbage and the unintelligent crap that's basically fed to us by these bozos on the news seems completely illogical and unrealistic, and especially when it's delivered by these disingenuous fucking fools that you see. So yeah, it looks pretty shit in our current state. And I don't see it getting any better with our liberties and freedom taken away day by day, with the guise of public safety and all this other crap about vaccines, preventative measures. There always seems to be some preventative and precautionary measure that needs to be implemented rather than actually fixing a problem if and when it does occur, because to me it seems like the chances of these things actually happening, like I haven't seen any outbreak on the street, and the only difference in life these days is the fact that everyone's just doing what they're told and staying at home. Like, I've heard of no one dropping dead and dying on the streets, and I've done my very best to catch this fucking virus, and nothing has happened to me, and I haven't even got a flu yet, for fuck's sake, which is odd. So maybe we're all too scared to catch the flu in case we'll get lynched on the street, but this is where society is now. It's a very shitty and dystopian world. And looking forward and from the 80s to a time like now, it really does seem to meet that horrible, dark, totalitarian, dystopian state that these B-grade sci-fi movies predicted back then. And so that brings us to the point, where to from here? Where are we going? How bad is it going to really get? Because if we consider all things, population growth, there's several elements at play here: a growing population, a toxic, doomed economic system, and then you've got bad leadership and politics, which has always been there, and of course the environment, which is degenerating due to human activity and overproduction and development of the natural world to churn out and turn living systems into resources and products for us mindless consumers to buy. So it's not really leaving too much room for the natural world to recover and sustain and regenerate and continue providing healthy, breathable atmosphere for us all to live in, which is what we really need more than we need a bunch of crappy fucking phones and stupid plastic products. Sorry. So, I mean, there are several ways to predict the future, and as reasonably intelligent beings, we're able to observe our current and present situation, reflect upon the past, sort of analyze trends and patterns, and then make a prediction for the future based on that. Is it getting better or is it getting worse? To me, it seems like it's getting a shitload worse. But when we look at ancient and indigenous cultures, even European culture has their prophecies, and we have Nostradamus, we have religious prophecies in the Bible, but the ones that I sort of lean more towards are the Native American prophecies. Having a little Native American heritage myself, I've always looked to Native American wisdom for guidance in my life, and of course, being a vegan, I've just tried to exercise compassion and consideration for all life forms on the planet, and I think if we did follow those sort of guidelines and that way of thinking, I don't think many people would suffer if we're all compassionate and considerate beings. If we stopped killing stuff and growing more, I think we'd be okay. But of course we can go into the specifics of that another time. But because today we're looking into the future, so we have to stay on topic. Otherwise, I'm going to fucking trail off into a completely different direction and bore the fuck out of you and me. So, with prophecy, and Native American prophecy in particular, to cut it short, the Hopi Indians have a prophecy. They have 9 signs that are sort of leading into the purification day and period where there's going to be a great renewal on Earth. And the 9 signs sort of started and followed the invasion, let's say, of the Europeans across North America, and what the Native Americans and the Hopi would actually see as a result of that. And they saw carts with spinning wheels, and they saw telephone lines and snakes of iron, which were railroad tracks and that. And then and of course all those have come true, you know. Shimmering rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun, which is a road when you see on a hot day, it'll sort of shimmer and you'll kind of see a mirage at the end of it. And all those have of course come true, and they're really only waiting on one 9th and final sign, which is a sort of a blue-like star crashing into the earth after how they described it as being was that the humans would throw a big house into the sky and then it would come crashing down. And of course, you know, when you interpret that as being the International Space Station or something like that, you know, it's a big house that we've thrown into the sky and it's sort of orbiting around, and eventually it's going to be decommissioned and have to be sort of burnt up through the atmosphere over the Atlantic or something like that, and then it may fall prey to rogue space debris or something, bringing it down into the atmosphere. You know, it's only because it's being boosted up that it's able to sort of maintain a constant distance and orbit from the Earth. And so that is the 9th and final sign of the Hopi prophecies, and after that, they say that their ceremonies will end, but they predict another age of purification, and of course, each age and each purification is by a separate element. Water producing floods. You may have the earth turning over, earthquakes and stuff like that, and then I'm not sure, maybe wind comes into it somehow, but generally it's by an element of some kind. But they say that this next purification day will be brought about by the element of fire. And to me, I could probably interpret that. I mean, of course there's always a danger and possibility of asteroid impact, but I would say that it's more likely in our current political, social state and climate that we're in as a global society. I'm going to lean more towards the possibility of nuclear exchange with humans. I'm sure that because we've built these weapons, I'm sure we're going to use them at some stage, and it'll be by our own design that we've caused our own destruction and demise, and perhaps that's the lesson that we need to learn as a civilization, that we will eventually destroy ourselves. And I think that's another sort of a Native American proverb as well. Every advanced civilization dies by suicide. And in essence, you can see that we're just going to eat ourselves to death with overproduction, consumption, and constant battle, conflict, and war, inevitably leading into the ultimate of wars being nuclear. And of course, I think in India they have their prophecies, and I believe that there is a sort of a myth that they have in fact experienced a nuclear war in the past. If you believe that previous civilizations did develop advanced technology like we have, but of course it's been very suppressed and obviously deteriorated over the ages with due to geological events. What we have been taught in school and history may not be true. There may have been more advanced civilizations on Earth. These are things I can't say for sure myself, but I know that there's other research done on this, so I'm keeping an open mind to all things, because I'm just one person. I don't know, but I do like to explore and take in and absorb all the evidence first before making an opinion. But I try to make my opinions as educated as possible, and so I mean, when you look at the Native American culture, the reason I do tend to subscribe to their philosophy and prophecies more than anyone else, or more than any other culture, including my own being European, largely of a European descent. But the Native Americans, they have a respect and a connection with the earth, and they believe in harmony and balance, and so I believe that their way of thinking and their philosophy is more in line with my own sort of beliefs. So that's why I'm more likely to sway toward the Native American view, opinion, and projection of human society. And so really, when you look around and you see what's happening in the world, and everything today seems so fucked up and topsy-turvy, and it's all flipped upside on its head, things are weird. People people don't really believe in anything anymore. They have no morals and values as such. It's all driven by this need for self-satisfaction and the pursuit of one's own progression for their own benefit and experience, and not much else beside that. And the way things are in the world, and from a vegan perspective, the world is a pretty shitty place, and it's overpopulated, polluted. There is violence, war, destruction going on within humans, as well as humans casting out against all other species and the planet and environment itself for its own gain. And we're behaving more like a very destructive organism. We've really only used our technology to create destruction more than we've benefited the earth or anyone else. I mean, look around, most people seem extremely unhappy these days. We're living in a very artificial world, far removed from nature, and a lot of us just seem a little disgruntled, jaded and unhappy. So when you consider all those things and you see where civilization is going, and if we can all agree that we're living in a finite space and we're overpopulating, producing and operating with the idea of unlimited growth, you can see that in itself is going to come to a crashing end anyway. So observing all those elements, you can see it really is time for a purification as such, because we're living in very degenerative, just quite a foul state of existence as human beings. We're a very depraved species now. We lack any common decency, and most of us don't really have the values that society needs to move forward in a sustainable manner. So basically the only way to end this is a quote from a Slayer song, Disciple. What is keeping me around and alive in these dark times? And really, I'm just waiting for the day the whole world fucking dies.